All right, so this evening we are doing access to credit and funding. But before we start, I wanted to thank all those people who emailed me. I was rather impressed and I did respond to every single one of you today. So thank you very much. To the persons that I promised I would get back the information about the wills and probate intervention and the bank intervention as it pertains to the beneficiaries, I am I was unable to get a response back from the bank immediately. However, I want to promise you that I am still keeping an eye on this, and I will get back to you on Thursday, the latest, when we have our final session. Okay. So my apologies for not getting back to those who had asked the questions. However, the people who emailed me, check your inboxes. I did respond to all of you all, and thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your experiences with me. So we're going to start out now. This evening, I always start by telling you all about what we expect as good manners this evening. So I'll guide you through the presentation. I have allocated some time at the end for discussion and questions to ensure that everybody can participate and gain the most from the session. I want to apologize again because I know last week on Tuesday, sorry, somebody asked about having the camera on, and I will do my best to be at a device that has a camera on our final week so everybody can see me. I'm not sure what there is to see, but somebody did request that, so I'll make sure that happens. Respect and sensitivity for this evening. Understanding finances can be challenges. We all come from diverse backgrounds with varying degrees of familiarity to finance, so please let's be supportive and respectful towards each other's experiences and questions. If something isn't clear and you need further explanation during the presentation, just raise your hand. I'll do my best to answer immediately. If it requires more detailed response, I will note it down and get back to you later. Privacy is important. Should you need to share any personal or sensitive information, I encourage you to do so through a private message. This will help maintain your confidentiality. Let's use this opportunity to learn, support, and empower each other. Every question or insight shared enriches our collective understanding. At the end of tonight's presentation, I will provide you with details as how to reach me for further additional resources or for any assistance I may be able to help you with. So again, thanks for your attention, and let's have a productive session this evening. Let's focus on empowering ourselves through financial literacy. So welcome again to my sisters from St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, and St. Kitts and Nevis. My goal this evening is to equip you with the knowledge and skills necessary to access finance and funding. So today we'll talk a lot about the different things that are happening in terms of access and banking. So it is indeed my pleasure to have this opportunity to speak to you on this topic, as it is both very crucial and it is something that is very close to my heart. Persons who know me will know that I am in a constant fight with banks and financial institutions for the punitive measures I believe they do in allowing people who most need access to allow them access to finance. As you may know, rural women play a vital role in the economic development of our communities. However, often we are faced with significant challenges in accessing finance resources that are essential for the empowerment and success of our communities. Today, we will explore those challenges, the barriers that hinder access to credit, and the innovative solutions that can help us to bridge those funding gaps. I will share my insights on some data that highlights the current landscape and credit access for rural women, particularly in the Caribbean. We'll also discuss the impact that has improved access to funding can have on our livelihoods, families, and communities. Together, we'll explore the opportunities that exist for supporting rural women and ensuring that they have resources that they need to thrive. I look forward to engaging with you all on this topic, so let's get started. So we're going to do a little recap from Tuesday because Tuesday was important leading on today. And on Tuesday, we discussed personal financial literacy. We highlighted how you being financially literate can impact positively on your households and extending further to your communities. We emphasized how important it was for you in particular to understand how to manage your finances effectively. In doing so, at the end of the thing, I sent you guys free worksheets, a budget worksheet, an actual income and expenses worksheet, and the net worth worksheet. So I would like you to tell me if you all were able to fill it out. I will use, it's now 6:13. I will use exactly 7 minutes now to talk to you about any questions or concerns you had about the worksheets. Were they helpful? Can you see you using them in the future? Did you find out anything enlightening? So anybody who wants to ask can pop a question in the chat now, or could raise their hand. Tell me if you were able to. If you were not, that's fine. You can do it at another time. It wasn't, when I said homework, it wasn't homework in the sense that if you don't do it, you're going to lose points. I just wanted you to have a look at it, and then you'd have an opportunity to discuss with me. So is there anybody who would like to ask any questions about it? No? Okay. Don't be shy. But I understand. I guess that means that everybody knows how to budget and is budgeting and sticking to their budget.
Miss Daniel, I have a question. Good
No
evening,
problem.
everybody. I'm not sure, but okay. So let me see. From what I understand, I'm not thinking of the budget because I cannot do a budget anyway.
Mhm.
When it comes to assets, and tell me if I'm correct, if what I understand is correct. Your assets are what you would have like after you clear off all your debts, what you're left with as your assets.
No.
Okay, so what are
Your
the assets then?
assets are what you own. But then you can have an asset and still have what you call a liability on it. So technically, the part that's the asset is the part you paid off. So for instance, your home is an asset, but it only becomes an asset when you eventually pay it off. You understand? So if you have a
Okay.
car, you have a fridge at your home, you have a stove, you have all these things are assets. Your computer is an asset, if you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
So your home is a liability to you until you pay off the bank. But when you do, it becomes an asset. So for instance, if your home is worth $600,000 and you've already paid off 300,000 on it, 300,000 is what the asset amounts to. Does that make sense? So it will be the right type of the balance sheet.
Okay. Okay, so my home is worth $600,000 and I paid 3 on it. So the
Your
300 that's
asset,
remaining is an asset to me.
no, the 300 that's remaining is a liability for you because you still haven't paid the bank, and technically they still have a right over it.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So let's forget about that, not to confuse you. Let's consider assets, things you own outright. Or if you own your car outright, that's an asset. If you bought a piece of farming equipment, if you bought let's say a fridge, that's an asset. So
Okay,
these
that's
are
if
what
you
we
bought
call
the same
assets.
assets cash now. Okay.
Yes.
So
But if
then
you're on an higher purchase, then they're not an asset until you've
then
paid
an
for them.
asset. So then now to calculate your net worth now, so when you take out all your liabilities from your asset, what you're left with is your net worth.
Exactly. So if, for instance, you have $10 in the bank, but you owe the bank 300, your net worth is minus 290. So it means your net worth is not, that's not a good thing. However, if you have $300 in the bank and you owe the bank $10, then your net worth is $290. That's what you're worth today.
Okay, I understand.
So your net worth really is the difference between what you own, OWN, and what you owe, OWE.
Okay, I
That's
understand.
your net worth. So some people are walking around and you might think they have a big car, they have a BMW, they have a big house, but the amount of money they owe the bank, their net worth is probably minus in a lot. Does that make sense? So
Yes,
just
I
because somebody
understand.
have things doesn't mean that they own it or that their net worth is great.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you very much. Yes, I understand.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
But to enable you to get a good net worth, what you can do is to use the budget, plan for the month. So maybe November is coming. Make a budget for November. And I challenge all of you all at the end of November to prepare the expenses and income sheet, which where you put down actually what you spend. and look at the difference between what you budgeted and what you did actually spend, and see if you were close and how you can change it.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Miss Gopal Joseph has a question.
Yes, I just want to ask in the monthly budget, I realize there's no space for leisure expenses or contingency for leisure or any other expense that may come. Was it deliberately left out, or we were supposed to fill it in if we have
Exactly. Great question. Great question. So what happened is that I just gave you a sample because everybody's household and how they run it is different, right? I might buy dog food, you don't have dog food. You understand? So what
Yes.
it was meant to be flexible. If there's something that's missing, you add it. If there's something you don't want, you omit it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Miss, it does. Thank you.
No problem. You're welcome. Miss Yolanda Regis Joseph, you had your hands up?
Yes, good evening, everyone. So my question is, the documents which you sent, they're all PDFs.
Mhm.
Would it be possible to get the monthly one in Excel or in a format that we can edit?
Sure. So I can make that available to you all. But again, these were just samples. So what I'll probably do is to just prepare one for you all individually and try and get it to you all before Thursday next week, if that's okay.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Okay. Any other questions, Sandy? I can't see. Someone for Charles had a hand up. She put it down.
We have a question in the chat.
Okay.
If the home belongs to my husband or it's in my name, do I consider it an asset or does the asset belong to my husband?
Oh. So we're crossing boundaries there in terms of family law and family court. So that depends. If your husband was married, had his home before he married you, then under St. Lucia law, probably not. The way you would acquire it in his passing is if he left a will or he decided to add your name on the deed. However, if he bought it whilst you were married, you might have some claim to it. But that's why it's always a good thing when you're married to somebody that you get your name on the deed. So if and when something happens, then it becomes less. So as it pertains to that, I'm not sure. If you still have a mortgage on it, then it's not an asset until to you until him or you have paid off the mortgage anyhow. But I'm happy to answer that question individually. If you send an email to me and give me a bit more details, I can maybe direct you to somewhere, even if I can't answer it. Okay?
Yeah, that's all, yeah. Yeah.
Sandy, you're
I
not
tried.
muted, huh? Okay, so I'm guessing that's it. Carol Richardson. Okay, just the last one. Carol, go ahead. You'll be
Okay,
the last person.
I don't really know how about budgeting and that stuff, but what I have started is that I have a money box and I promise myself that I will throw in at least maybe $10, $20. Is that considered budgeting or savings
That's
towards a budget?
considered safe. Well, that's considered savings. But if you have a goal, so you're saving towards a goal. But that's actually a great question. And you can always do that in the absence of going to a bank. So whatever you have, you just put it aside. And if, for instance, you say that's for me to take a vacation or for me to buy something in particular, you saving towards a goal. So you it's what we spoke about earlier. You make a plan and you put things in place to execute that plan. So well done to you. you've devised a way for you to be able to get to your goal. And by doing so, you put it in a cash fund. It doesn't always have to be a bank. So yes, Carol, you're saving towards a goal. But in order to budget, what you would do is to tell yourself, I'm going to put $10 every week. That's the budget part. However, if you don't put the $10 every week, then you're not going to get the outcome you want when you want it.
Well,
So basically, you're doing both.
actually, I'm not working really, but every time people give me a change, I spend it. So I work out, let me, based on how much I get at the time, I decide whether well, I ain't going under $10, between $10 to $20. I'm not going above either.
That's great, Carol. So keep that up.
Sometimes things come up and you might not have the money on the bank, but I figure since I'm not working, let me go that direction. Right? So,
Yeah, that's a great idea, Carol. I will
yeah,
give you a
thank
little
you.
anecdote. I lived on my own for a while and with my kids, and I remember things were tight at that time. And I'll tell you how I used to save. When I got home and I had any money, I would take out maybe like £10 or £100, and I would put it in the pockets of my clothes hanging in my closet and forget it. And anytime I was really broke, I would go in a pocket and there you go, I would find £10 or £20. So we all have different ways of doing it, and do what suits you and what you're comfortable with. But the point is you're doing something. So great job.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. So we'll move on now. I gave you all 2 scenarios I sent to you all. And I wanted to just run through it quickly. The reason I gave you all those scenarios was because, let me log out because I'm getting a feedback. The reason I sent those scenarios was because I wanted you all to have a look at it, and I wanted us to go through it. As we go through the rest of the session, I wanted you all to refer back to it. So essentially, I'm hoping that you're ready. If you have read it, just put yes in the chat. If you haven't, put no, just so that I know how to tailor the rest of this evening. So the first scenario, I try to use as realistic as possible in terms of for somebody who's trying to do something perhaps in agro-processing, one who has a job and one who doesn't. And what I was trying to illustrate to you all is how accessing to finance differs when you have a job and when you don't. And from my perspective, sometimes it's a person who don't have the full-time job or the job that has a salary that needs the money the most. And what were these people's experiences? And I want you all to know these are things that actually happen in St. Lucia, in St. Vincent, in St. Kitts. So when you go for a job, and I want to know, whilst we're going through the rest of the presentation, I just wanted to ask yourselves a few questions. What are the different types of income you currently have or can develop to support a loan application? Because the whole purpose of this evening is arming you with tools and teaching you about, getting access to funding. And one of the things about getting access to funding is not, you will find that most people's experiences with loans is that their time is wasted. They go to the bank, they ask, can I get a loan? The bank say to bring this, bring that. Then when they get there, the bank say, bring this, bring that, bring this, bring that. So for me, it's about allowing you to prepare for a good loan application even before you get to the bank. So the bank has no excuse to turn you down, if that makes sense. So I want you to, throughout this presentation, to consider how does having a stable income like Mary's teaching job influence a loan application? What do you think about Ms. Odongo's expressed concern about Amita's lack of additional income source? What strategies could Amina use to demonstrate to the loan officer that her business idea is viable despite the risk? What key elements should be included in a business plan when applying for a loan? How can you estimate costs and revenues for the business idea before applying for the loan? So for instance, don't go and apply for a loan for business and you haven't put together a business plan because they'll ask you for it. Decide how you're going to put it. Don't get somebody to write the business plan for you and you don't know what's in it because you'll have to defend it. You'll have to explain to them and justify why you want the loan. So you need to be able to do these things. How important is it to build a relationship with the vendors in your community and your members before starting a group? What roles do women's groups like Helen's Daughters play in supporting business ventures for women like Amina? And I said that I use Amina specifically because Helen's Daughter provides some avenues for a lot of women at the moment, particularly if the farmers market. But how many of you, when you make the income, you actually deposit it into a bank so you could have a record so the bank can see that you do? So when you go for a loan, they have proof that you actually have the income you say you do, because a lot of it is about proving that what you're telling them is true, right? How do you determine the right amount to request for a loan, right? How do you determine whether you need 5, you need 3, you need 6? What strategies can you use to present your business ideas confidentially to a loan officer? We've had a lot of instances, I know for fact, in St. Lucia, where people claim they presented their business idea to a loans officer, they've turned them down, and the loans officer have passed it on to a family member or friend to be able to come for a loan. So how do you protect your ideas and your confidentiality with a loan officer that they don't? We live in a small society, so you have to be able to look at things like that. How can sharing personal stories and motivations like Amina's situation influence a loans officer, right? What do you think about loans officers? What do you think loans officers look for beside the business idea? How can you understand the loans officer's perspective to help you prepare for a stronger application? Have you ever had experience applying for a loan? What challenges did you face? What lessons have you learned from others who have successfully secured loans for their business? What alternatives to traditional loans can you think about that might help you fund your business? How can you leverage community resources or programs to strengthen your loan application? So I want you to think about all these questions, and at the end of the presentation, we will come back and have a discussion about them, okay? So that's for scenario 1. So for scenario 2, we're going to look at what roles does having a steady job like Rose play in the loan application? For those who are fully dependent on a business idea like Fatima, what challenges do you anticipate? What do you think the loans officer reviewed as high-risk candidate despite her determination and community support? Why do you think she was looked at as high risk? What factors do you think the loan officer considers when evaluating the risk of lending? What elements should be included in a business plan to convince a loans officer of its viability, right? Time management. For those of you who have the commitments, like Rose with her job, how do you manage your time if you were to start a business? What strategies could you use to ensure that your business receives the attention it needs? So for instance, you could go to the bank like Rose and say, oh, I have a job. She does have a salary. And then you say, oh, I want to do this. And the loans officer turns it around and says, how are you going to find time to do your job and do the business? I can't give it to you because I think there's an 80% of small businesses that start that fail. So how are you going to convince that loans officer that you can manage your time with your job and the responsibility to make the business work to support you paying back the loan, right? How important it is to establish a relationship with your officer. And I speak about that earlier. When I say a relationship, it means that you can prove to the loans officer that you have income coming in somewhere from what you are asking for the loan for, which really doesn't make sense. Because if you're starting out, how much money can you have? So I am here today to try and equip you with the tools that you will need to be able to do things like that. What lessons can we learn from Rose and Fatima's experiences regarding the loan process? How can you apply these lessons to your own situations when considering applying for a loan? After these scenarios, we'll have a discussion, like I said, and then we will do that. So now I'll move on to a little bit of the boring stuff, and then we'll come back to a little bit of excitement, if that's okay with you. If you have any questions in the meantime, Sandy, if you are here, I'm not able to see the chat at the moment. So if there's any, like 3 questions, just let me know so I can stop and take them, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem.
Yes. So I just want to talk to you, and I think it's important for you to understand and have an ability to identify the barriers and the opportunities that come with access to finance. Because if you are not able to do that, how will you be able to navigate and put yourself in a position to be able to qualify for the finance and funding available, right? So many rural women lack the necessary education to understand banking processes, loans, and credit management. We spoke about that last week. That can lead to a lack of confidence in engaging financial institutions. And again, you don't have to answer, but I know of many people who go to the bank trembling when it's time to get a loan. And when they don't get the loan, they are devastated. Applying for finance can have emotional distress on certain people, depending on their confidence levels. And that is why I want to equip you with the skills today that if you go to a bank and it turns you down, guess what you do? You dust it off and you figure out what went wrong, and then you move on, and then you apply to another bank, another institution, you do your research, and then you go in with the confidence to say, listen, I've got this. Yeah, traditional gender roles may restrict women's access to financial resources, as men are often viewed as primary decision makers. Right? Societal norms may discourage women from seeking loans or financial independence, leading to lower participation in economic activity. We spoke about that last week as well, how in the days of farming, men used to be able to just walk in by the virtue of being a farmer and then just command, and they would be able to get something. And up to today in 2024, women cannot do that. So we have to look at that. And when you go in, you have to assess the person doing the loan, decide if that's the officer you may want to deal with. Is there an implicit bias already towards you, one as a woman? And I want you not to be surprised. A lot of the barriers you will face, particularly in the banks with loans officers, we will be from women like ourselves. And I'm not sure why, if that's how we've been conditioned, but I'm counting on you to be able to break those barriers, which is why today we're going to talk a lot about this. So listen to the boring stuff. It will make sense, I promise. Lack of collateral. Rural women particularly often have limited access to use as collateral, which is a common requirement for loans. I have always been of the view that banks only lend to people who don't need the money. Hence the reason why they need collateral. Because if you're a small farmer and you go in and you don't have land papers, you don't have any money in the bank, or let's say you need a loan for $5, but you only have $1,000. The fact that the bank wants you something the equivalent or more than what they borrow you, it's already discouraging. Because why would you give up $5,000 in the bank to borrow $4, like we spoke about last week, right? So the lack of collateral for women, and often, like somebody just said earlier, does my husband had a house? Do I own the house? That's something that happens very common within relationships. So even if as a woman, you could have said, okay, I can use the property to take some equity so I could get a loan. But if your name is not on the deeds, the bank will not touch it either. So these are things I need you to consider. The lack of physical access can limit one's ability to access credit, even if they have a viable business idea. And I'm so sorry this continues to happen. And every day I wake up, I fight for it not to happen. I had a fight with somebody at a bank today too about something similar to that. Inadequate financial institutions. Many rural areas have few banks or financial institutions, making it difficult for women to access services. The existing institutions may not offer products tailored to the specific needs of women or rural entrepreneurs. So let's look at a community in Fort Saint-Jacques, or the top of Fort Saint-Jacques, called Mini. The people who live there are primarily farmers. Imagine you wanted a loan, you have to go down into Soufrière. But how many banks are there in Soufrière? So your only choice, I believe, at the moment is one bank, a local bank. There are loads of credit union, but like I spoke to you about it last week, you need to be a member, you need to have some shares there, and the interest rates are high. So your options are really limited. And that is what we are trying to navigate. How do we get access to financing with all those barriers that we face? Next, interest rates. Either interest rates are extremely high or the terms of repayment for the loans are unfavorable. Women face higher interest rates or unfavorable loan terms, making borrowing less attractive. This can deter you from pursuing a loan, even when there is potential for business opportunities. Note well, I'm always saying that, even when there is potential, even when there is a viable business idea, we are knocked back at every turn. Limited knowledge of available products. That's the other thing. Sometimes there are products on the market, but how do you know about it? How do you find out about it? Where are you going to go? I want to encourage you all this evening. I want to tell you all a little story, and I'll try and be brief. In Japan, a lot of us are on TikTok on our phones, and I'm not sure if you'll already recognize, but TikTok can be quite addictive from one shot to the next. But the crap you get on TikTok, does it ever benefit your life? I was reading the other day in the Financial Times that in Japan, TikTok is actually, the algorithms are dictated, I believe, by the government, which may not be a good thing, but to only show things that can benefit people. So business ideas. And it's amazing how the community and the generation, the younger generation, is thriving on these things. So all I can tell you, your knowledge is as limited as you allow it to be. Google is an amazing tool. You will find bad information and good, but you have to figure out a way to decipher the good. So at some point, just Google funding in the Caribbean. Loans, low interest loans for women in the Caribbean, and something will pop up. Something will pop up. Then you can investigate it further. Then perhaps you can send an email to Helen's Daughters and say, listen, I saw this. Do you think it's credible? Should I apply? Because we would have known about it as well. Okay. So limited knowledge is only as limited as you want it to be. Use the resources you have to be able to make yourself more aware. The knowledge gap can prevent women from exploring financial resources that could support their business, right? Financial literacy programs, exactly what we're doing now. Helen's Daughters is doing this because they recognize the value of making and enabling you to be financially literate. This can empower you with the knowledge you need to manage your finances and understand the loan process. Workshops and training can enhance their confidence in dealing with financial institutions. So although you're doing this as part of the Ag-cademy, and I'm aware a lot of you are not members of Helen's Daughters, I would like to encourage you that on the next membership opening that you apply to Helen's Daughters, because this is something that is part of our agenda, that although we do these programs, but throughout the year, we will continue to provide financial literacy and training for all our members because we recognize how important it is for them. Microfinance and cooperatives. Promoting microfinance institutions and women cooperatives can provide alternative fundings that are accessible. These organizations often have a better understanding of the unique challenges faced by rural women. Again, I am sorry, I'm not sure for St. Kitts and St. Vincent, but in St. Lucia, all you need to form a cooperative is 10 persons. If you live in a community where you feel a cooperative can benefit you, whether it be a farming cooperative, a credit union, please find out if you can do it and be the change you want to see, okay? So collaborating with governments can create programs, grants and subsidies. Sometimes you can get these, as you know, Helen's Daughters is, and it doesn't matter to us. We don't really accept funding from any government whatsoever, and we don't really, but if there is something the government is offering, I believe they do share it on your various platforms. Networks and mentorship. So now we're looking at the opportunities. Establishing networks and mentorship programs can connect you with successful entrepreneurs who can provide guidance and support. These connections can help you to navigate the financial landscape and access resources more effectively. So some of you have already connected with me, and if after this program is over, you want to keep in touch with me, I'm okay with that. I will always try and help somebody who's trying to help themselves, okay? Tailored financial products. The banks should be encouraged to develop products that are catered specifically for rural women, so that they can improve their access to credit. Flexible repayment terms and lower interest rates can make loans more attractive and manageable. And one of the reasons I have identified flexible repayment terms, you work as a teacher, you work as a bank clerk, you work as anything, you get a set salary. We know as farmers, our incomes are neither fixed or constant. So I believe that any institution who was going to tailor for the needs of you should be able to look at being a bit more flexible. I had an email today from somebody asking me, why is it that, they've been unemployed for a little while and the bank has a service fee of $3 and the bank continues to take it even though there is no money in the account or no activity. And I reached out to the bank, and would you all be surprised that the bank says there's nothing they can do, the account will eventually close? And that is why I believe we need organizations that can be a little bit more flexible and be a little bit more human. $3 may not be nothing to somebody, but it means a lot to somebody else. So little things like that can make a difference. So I believe banks should be able to tailor or have specific, so even though the bank has like one thing does not fit everybody. And if we continue that way, there will always be a segment of the society. And unfortunately, women are disproportionately affected by it, that will always be disadvantaged by access to finance. So we have to try and make that difference, stand up for ourselves, figure out how we can help each other, contact Helen's Daughters and see how we can help you. Let us know what is happening so that we can speak on your behalf, right? Some of the things that access to finance will do, it will improve the quality of life and living conditions, educations for women and their children. This can lead to positive change, where educated children now can come back and make contributions and break the cycle of poverty. Just because you're a farmer or you're a laborer, it shouldn't mean that your children has to be. You should be able to access finance to be able to give your kids. And that's the other part that hurts sometimes, because children of poorer families have sometimes even more drive than children from richer families, but they don't have the equal footing. So a richer family can mortgage a piece of land and send their kids to school. And you have a child from a poorer family who can perform just as well or even better. But because their parents don't have the collateral, this child will probably never make it to university. So all I'm saying is that if you are able to get access to finance, become more financially literate, you will be able to create better opportunities for yourself, your grandchildren, your communities at large, right? So that's it about barriers and opportunities. Financial empowerment for women is not just a matter of fairness and equity. It's crucial for broader economic growth and economic development. And note that my theme is, this is not just about you sitting here today and taking this class or this workshop or this presentation. It's far bigger than me, than you. It will have implications on generations to come if we do not take accountability for our own financial literacy and where we're at with it. Okay. Accessible credit and funding enables women to start and expand their business, invest in agriculture, and improve their living conditions, thereby contributing to overall economy. You understand? So if you have access to finance, the things you can do is limitless, right? At the moment in the Caribbean, we have a big issue with food security. Can you imagine if more women had access to getting things in place to be able to, for instance, I know you all did something with Marquis Trust on greenhouses. Those of you in St. Kitts and Nevis who know, I mean, it's just an amazing thing to see what Marquis can do in a very small space and what he did at the Elizabeth Pemberton School on behalf of Helen's Daughters. Can you imagine? I can just foresee if 5 women in St. Lucia had an opportunity like that, what they could do. But they need the capital to be able to start, and there isn't enough access to funding to allow them to do this. So entrepreneurship and job creation, that's something that access to funding would give. Increased agricultural output, thereby reducing on our import bill for foodstuff, right? With adequate funding, we can purchase better seeds, invest in modern farming techniques, and increase our farm inputs, which boosts the local food industry and lowers food insecurity, right? Financially empowered women are more likely to invest in sustainable business practices and in the resilience of their communities to natural disasters, which are so prevalent in the Caribbean at the moment, right? Because if we are able to get the money, we can now put in place so many things that we need in order to enable us. So when the hurricane comes, when this flood comes, but we don't have that, then it wipes us off and we start again from zero. There's a broader social impact as well. With improved financial stability, we can afford to invest in our children's education, right? Like I said, better education leads to the children coming back and contributing. Health and well-being, that translates, when you have money, or not have money, when you have an ability to make money, that translates into better healthcare for women, for our families. Yeah, we can afford certain medical health. How many women do we know, if not ourselves, who feel sick today I always tell people as a mother, as a woman, we have to plan the day we're going to be sick because you have no choice but to get up and do it. And by the time you check yourself, happily this month we're celebrating or recognizing Breast Cancer Month. How many of you have gone and done the check to make sure that you don't have any lumps, or to have a pap smear, or to do something like that? The cost of a pap smear sometimes is prohibitive. And by the time you realize there's something wrong, and all these things tie in together: access to finance, access to funding. You all have immense skill sets, but you don't have the right tools, or there's not enough access to finance for us. And I want you to shout at the top of your voices. I want you to figure out a way for you to be able to break down these barriers with me, for us to be able to all be on an equal footing with all the people who have access to finance. Okay? Psychological well-being improves when individuals have control over their finances, reducing stress and related health issues. I know people that are so stressed out by the lack of not having money. They're in a constant state of anxiety. So health, well-being, all these things are intertwined by one simple thing: gender equality. Empowering women challenges traditional gender roles and promote gender equality, not only within the family, but across the entire community. As women contribute more significantly to household income and community wealth, their voices gain weight in community affairs and decision-making. Another thing access to finance can help is reduction in gender-based violence. Economic independence can reduce women's vulnerability to domestic and gender-based violence. A lot of women feel they have no choice but to stay in situations because the men are the providers, and it could be vice versa as well. Financial security allows more freedom to make life choices and escape abusive relationships, right? The financial empowerment of rural women through accessible credit and funding is essential for catalyzing economic growth and enhancing community developments in the Caribbean. By investing in women, communities do not only promote gender equality, but also trigger a domino effect on benefits ranging from improved educational outcomes for children to enhanced overall community well-being. The holistic development is crucial for the sustainable progress of rural areas in the Caribbean, making the empowerment of women not just social or morally imperative, but a fundamental economic strategy. So, just a little bit of stats. Boring as it may be, but I think it's important that you hear about it. According to the recent demographic studies, 30 to 40% of the Caribbean population resides in rural areas, with women consisting of a significant portion of this demographic. For instance, in countries like Jamaica and Dominica, women represent about 50% of the rural population. That's a lot of women. The age distribution among rural women often skews towards younger demographics, with a significant percentage, sometimes perhaps as high as 40%, being between the ages of 18 and 35. This useful population presents both challenges and opportunities for economic development. How are we capitalizing on the opportunities while taking into account those challenges? Many rural women are heads of households, often raising children alone or in extended family arrangements. This family structure can influence economic decisions and priorities, as these women balance caregiving responsibility with income-generating activities, right? Economic contributions of rural women. Rural women play a vital role in agriculture, contributing to food production, processing, and marketing. So many of you here in St. Kitts, in St. Lucia, in St. Vincent. I'm not too familiar with St. Vincent, but I did get to meet some of our Vincent, St. Kitts and Nevis counterparts. You all are into agro processing. You all have to market your products. You all produce them. You all, I mean, you all are responsible for planting, harvesting your crops, and frequently engage in sustenance farming to support your families. Women are estimated to produce over 60% of the region's food supply. Craftsmanship. Many rural women are skilled artisans. We see it all the time with the soap making, with the drying of the fruits, the cake baking, textiles, traditional goods, not only making for local markets, but also you contribute towards the tourism sector. Your craftsmanship reflects cultural heritage while providing a source of income. Local businesses, right? Women often run small businesses such as grocery shops, food stores, and service-oriented enterprises. These businesses are vital for local economies as they provide employment and stimulate economic activity. But there are many challenges that are faced by women and rural women in particular. Rural areas in the Caribbean, in particular, often experience high rates of poverty compared to the urban regions. Many women live below the poverty line, which limits their ability to invest in education, health, and businesses, right? You have limited access to healthcare because most women, and I should not say rural women, because I think more women in particular are affected by this than rural women. However, Helen's daughters tend to focus a lot on rural women in agriculture, but things like healthcare, health insurance is not always affordable, or access to good doctors, or the waiting is sometimes so long that you end up getting sicker before you're able to see somebody to get better, or you don't have the monies to see the doctor. So I recognize and understand that there are many challenges. So while rural women in the Caribbean are integral in their communities and economies, they face significant challenges that hinder their financial empowerment. Addressing those barriers through targeted financial support resources is essential for us all to unlock the potential fostering inside of us for sustainable development. So we move to loans now. The overview of credit and funding resources. The main banks and credit unions. In the Caribbean, we have major banks still, and I'm only naming these two on a general. I try not to name banks, but I think the last big banks or international banks in the Caribbean are CIBC. I think they were first Caribbean, they moved back to being CIBC. So CIBC in Canada is back. Now it's no longer first Caribbean CIBC. And I'm not sure if Scotiabank is still in St. Kitts and Nevis, but I think they pulled out and it's Republic now. And along with the local banks, which you guys know, Nevis, St. Vincent, the St. Vincent local national bank, and the local credit unions. These are the primary institutions we have. These entities typically offer savings, accounts, personal loans, and sometimes agricultural loans tailored to meet the needs of the rural population. If you all can tell me by putting yes in the chat group, how many of you all have ever accessed an agricultural loan from a local bank or credit union in your respective countries? Just put yes if you have. Sandy, do we have any yeses? I cannot see. I'm not sure why.
No, Davy, we have 2 no's.
Okay. So again, imagine we have how many of you on the group now and nobody has ever accessed an agricultural loan with the bank. Can you guess why? Because the criteria are probably so high that people like you, because of your situations, cannot get access to it. That is just so wrong. The people who need it most cannot get access to it. Financial products for women, right? Products specifically designed for women might include microloans, group loans, savings schemes that encourage small-scale entrepreneurship. However, the availability and diversity of these products can vary significantly based on the institution and the specific area. Women often face significant barriers in financial services due to the gender biases and a lack of collateral. We spoke about this earlier. Financial institutions may perceive women, particularly those in agriculture or informal sectors, as high-risk borrowers compared to men, thereby limiting their access to other financial services. Can you guys imagine? Just because we are women and we have a vagina, and we're doing the same work as a man, we don't have the same access. And this is something that's real. It's documented. There's so many instances of it happening, that a man who's in agriculture will go to a bank with exactly the same thing that we are doing and producing, and they are more likely to get a loan than us. Microfinance. Microfinance provides small loans. Sorry, gender bias. Okay, I skipped one. Rural women often face, yeah, so I spoke about that already, compared to men, microfinance. Microfinance provides small loans to individuals who do not qualify for traditional bank products. Focusing particularly on women, those loans are usually accompanied by low interest and do not require collateral. The aim is to empower recipients, enabling them to start and expand small businesses. Now I'm going to share something with you. Helen's Daughters at the moment in the background is working on a microfinance scheme to be able to help its members. Because we recognize at Helen's Daughters the inability for a lot of our members to get access to funding. So these are some of the things that we provide. So sometimes when I listen and I hear members say, what is Helen's Daughters doing for us? We are working behind the scenes to do these things, but you have to understand, as a new organization, we have to build trust to be able to attract the funding. We have to make sure we do things right, which is why when we ask for certain things of you all, when we ask you all to make sure you put your names, to make sure you show up on time, these are qualities that now, when we now have to give the microfinancing, all these things can be looked upon, because we, in the absence of having collateral for you, we have to look that you have an ability to be able to repay us, that you have good faith, that you have good, how shall I put it? So that is why sometimes a lot of the training and the stuff we're doing is around developing you, so that when we find ourselves in the situation, we can give that, we can assess you on a different model as the bank is. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Okay,
So,
Davy, I have a
mhm,
question for you.
sure.
What about a farmer who cannot read? This is pertaining to getting funding and getting a loan.
Okay. So again, farmers have always been able to access funding. So they had most of the men, when I was growing up, got loans and stuff. They couldn't read, they couldn't write. I remember they used to come to the bank and they used to use their thumbprint. So I'm not sure that alone prevents you from getting a loan. If you have somebody you can trust, you get them to attend these very same sessions that we're doing now, so they too can learn about some of those things, so they can come and advocate on your behalf. But again, Helen's Daughters is inclusive, and we look after everybody who's part of our membership. And I'm sure we have members at the moment whose reading levels are not as strong as others, and we recognize that, and we create how should I put it, structures. We put structures in place to be able to accommodate them. So as it pertains to going to a bank at this moment in 2024 and getting a loan and you cannot read, I'm not sure how that obtains, but that would be interesting for me to find out. So I'm going to make a note so I could find out about that. I would really like to hear what some of my friends at the bank would say about that if somebody cannot read. So I'm making a note. However, if you are a member of Helen's Daughters and you cannot read, you don't have to advertise it. You can just send a private message to one of your coordinators. And if you do need access to funding, filling out a loan application, a grant funding, I am certain that they will make themselves available to assist you or to find somebody who can. Okay? I hope that answers your question. But I'll move on. Okay, so the impact of credit and funding. So for instance, in countries like Haiti and Guyana, microfinance initiatives have enabled women to invest in small-scale agriculture, crafts, and retail. For example, a program in rural Jamaica provided microloans to women to buy seeds and farming tools, specifically increasing their productivity and household income. So these things are already happening in the Caribbean. They're already happening, and they're showing success, and they're showing that they are not just helping the women, but they help in their communities, their families, and thereby these things trickle back into the whole economy. So Caribbean governments often launch initiatives aimed at boosting female entrepreneurship, such as grants, small businesses, training in financial literacy, and support for developing business programs. Programs might also focus on technology, but you have to always remember governments do things, they get funding for it, they normally try and do things to appease to their base, and sometimes you question the effectiveness and the reach. While those programs are well-intentioned, their reach and effectiveness can be limited by bureaucratic delays. So for instance, I remember we had a program some time ago in St. Lucia where they were giving some funding after COVID, but the amount of things you had to fill out to be able to get this, it was discouraging at best, right? So normally the bureaucratic delays, insignificant funding, lack of targeted outreach, ensuring that these programs are accessible to most remote rural areas remains a challenge, right? Organizations such as UN Women, International Fund, Helen's Daughters, they play a significant role in economic empowerment for women in the Caribbean, right? And I believe local NGOs can contribute by providing resources and training specific to the needs of you, which is why I have been asked to do this. And I would hope that the feedback you give can tell us even more what you'd like to see in the financial literacy courses, and we can do it with you on the next time. So you keep asking for what you want, and we will see how we can incorporate it in what we do. Okay, in Trinidad and Tobago, they offer some financial literacy workshops and seed funding to women starting their own businesses in rural areas. And that's the important thing. I think you give financial literacy or you give money as an NGO. And I think they should come hand in hand, because it's no use giving somebody funding and you haven't taught them how to use it, how to manage it, how to make more out of it. So there's a successful program in Trinidad that did just that. And the program not only improved the participants' economic status, but it also served as a model for similar programs in other Caribbean countries, right? I want to move on because I want to have enough time for me to allow you all to think. So, and then there's a few other things I want to go through with you all too. So again, I think we spoke about that again, how in the Caribbean societies, traditional gender roles dictate the women are predominantly responsible for the household duties, which can limit their activities. Societal expectations can create stigma around women who prioritize economic independence. So if you're a woman who, I often hear that, oh, you work too much, or you don't look after your family, or you do this, you do that. So women may face pressure to conform to roles that do not involve financial decision making and entrepreneurship, which can lead to a lack of support from family and community when they attempt to engage in business, right? So all these things I want you to be aware of when you start in business. Again, some of the barriers you face, again, and that keeps coming up, the lack of collateral. So many women don't own land. Property ownership laws sometimes disadvantage us, right? There's so many systematic inequalities, where women have less access to ownership, which is often required as a collateral for loans. The lack of collaterals makes it challenging for women to secure financing for business. Now, whilst we're on lack of collateral, maybe I can share a little something with you. Those of you all who are, I'm not sure for the north of the island, but it would be interesting if any of you are interested in land at reasonably below market prices to look at Invest St. Lucia and Proud. Invest St. Lucia does have something, and the lots are not a lot, but it is something that you can get a good start off on. And again, if you are completely dependent on farming, we can always assist with helping you start planning if you have an interest in land ownership, to be able to do proper financial recording. So when you do approach the bank for finance, that you have things in place to allow you to be able to do that, okay? Insufficient credit history. That is another thing that bars people. And when we say credit history, those of you who have lived away in the States, in England, in Canada, there is a database that collects how late you pay your credit card bill, your electricity bill, and then they point score you. I'm not sure if the rest of the other two islands have it. St. Lucia does not have it. But what happens, what they look for in terms of history for you is whether or not you have a constant flow. So for instance, the people who sell to Marcy, whether they deposit their matches checks into the account, that helps them if they're going to get funding. The people who sell to the hotels, do they deposit the monies there? So again, if you do have a business, try and create a separate account for it. And try and make sure, even though you take out all the monies, deposit the money so there is a record. Because these are the things the bank are looking for. History of credit in your account if monies that come from the activities that you want the financing from. Okay? Financial institutions, again, we spoke about that earlier. They exhibit a lot of biasness in lending practices, offering favoring male applicants or established businesses. Women may face additional scrutiny or higher interest rates based on stereotypes about the ability to manage loans or run businesses effectively. Such biasness can discourage women from applying for credit. And I'm talking about this on a Caribbean level, right? So by addressing these cultural and economic and institutional barriers, more effective pathways can be created to enhance women's economic participation and entrepreneurship in rural areas, in particular in the Caribbean. So I want you to know it's not all doom and gloom. However, the success cases that I came across in doing my research for this evening, they were not particularly from the Caribbean. But I still want to share it with you because I believe that Helen's Daughters in particular is on a pathway that will be able to assist with some of those things that I'm seeing and that you can play a meaningful role in it. So there's this organization called the Women's Microfinance Initiative. It's dedicated to providing microloans to women in rural areas in East Africa. This initiative focuses on empowering women to start and sustain their own businesses by providing them not only with capital, but also training in financial literacy and business management. And I want you to take note of that, which is why I don't want your financial literacy journey to stop today or next Thursday when we stop this course. It needs to be a continuous thing. Because if you are adequately financially literate, it will help you along the way for everything. Right? So since its inception, WMI has provided loans for over 1,500 women with a remarkable loan repayment rate of 98%. Did you guys hear that? So when people look at us and they say, we're not borrowing you because you can't afford it or we can't take a risk on you, 98% of the women they borrow have paid back the loans. Isn't that a great thing? And I say this to you because there's this perception among some members, and I know that for a fact, that Helen's Daughters, because a lot of the stuff we do, we try and do it for free, that we get free money. It's not free. So if we are able to come up with an initiative like that, we don't want people getting the funding and not paying it. Because if you repay it back, not only are you helping yourself for another loan and another loan, but you're also helping a sister to be able to empower her and help her to do better. So when and if these facilities become available to you, I want to tell you that the success of it will depend on you making an effort. And again, it's not going to be as stringent as the banks where they're going to say you have to do that. If the circumstances meet and you have a communication, I am sure it's going to be about flexibility. So I just wanted to tell you all about this. There's also another one called the Self-Employed Women's Association in India, right? It's a trade union in India that organizes women in low-income self-employment segment. It offers its members services such as microfinance, healthcare, and childcare, thereby enabling them to become more economically self-sufficient, right? 1.5 million women have been helped to increase their incomes and improve their livelihoods, right? Then there's the Garment Bank in Bangladesh. I would like you all to take this down and Google it and read about Garment Bank. Right? It was founded by a Nobel laureate where he pioneered the concept of microcredit for the poor without requiring collateral. A significant focus is on lending women who make up the majority of their borrowers. Garment Bank has impacted millions with over 90% of the shares owned by the rural women borrowers themselves, promoting financial inclusion and social empowerment. So look at the Garment Bank in Bangladesh. So what I'm trying to do for you all is that we have not been able to change the perspective of the banks because they're not interested in us. They have people that borrow money. So if an opportunity presents where you have a bank that can help you, I want you to see it as a plus, not a negative, and to encourage you to pay back what you get, right? So there's some impactful stories. Like, for instance, on their newsletter, I read about Betty, a mother of three, who received a small loan to start a poultry business. Right? With the initial loan, she was able to purchase chicken and start a small-scale poultry farm. The profits from her business enabled her to send her children to school, reinvest in her business, and gradually secure a sustainable income. Betty's success story is shared in the newsletters, and she's an inspiration to her community. Okay? So I have a few more stories, but overall, I just want to tell you the initiatives and stories, they underline a critical role that tailored financial products and supportive networks and how they play in enabling women to overcome economic barriers and achieve financial autonomy. So I just wanted to share that with you. So, interesting stuff. I wanted to talk to you all about signs of predatory lending. Now, you might think predatory lending is just, for instance, and I'm not going to name names. I don't know what the equivalents would be in St. Kitts and Nevis, but these places where you have payday loans, where you can go with your check and they will give you a loan and the interest rate is so high. Some banks, I believe, have some of their practices, I believe, are a bit predatory as well in the way that they deal with people. Again, I'm not going to name any loans, but I just wanted to share with you all some signs of what to look for when it might not be a good idea to take a loan, right? So I want you to be cautious of loans that you receive through the mail, on your phone, or flyers. A lot of these places, they're centered around bus stops. They do road shows with music. They go to places where people drink a lot of chicken and rum. They're around carnival. Be mindful of them. Because the hidden things, you get excited, you take the loan, but then nobody tells you about the excessive lender's fees, right? The normal fee should be within 3% of the loan amount, but charges above that threshold, always look at it as a red flag. So if a lender's fees is about 3%, try and think again. The high interest rates, right? Be wary of loans with unusually high interest rates, especially those in the triple digits, right? There's a particular company in St. Lucia, and I'm so heartened by that, who's providing agriculture loans at 31%. I mean, that's criminal, right? Higher rates can trap borrowers into a cycle of debt. And remember, that is what the institutions want. They'll have you just where they want you if you're in a constant state of debt. The lender reputations and the complaints. Listen to the complaints. You'll have social media, utilize it. If you are going to take a loan or lend from an institution that you're not sure about, go on Facebook or TikTok, whatever. Somebody must have said something or their practices are not nice. So research the lender's background and look at customer reviews. A higher number of complaints is indicative of predatory practices. Prepayment penalties. Any loan that will penalize you for paying it early is probably not a good idea. Penalties can hinder your refinancing efforts and paying off the loan too early. Okay? Any organization that promises you that you can modify the loan earlier, be skeptical, right? Those lenders that suggest refinancing in the future will resolve any of your issues, that could be a tactic to sell unfavorable loan terms. So please be aware of these things, right? Now, sometimes you take a loan and they forget to tell you about the taxes or the insurance. So some people take a loan and they don't realize the loan is insured. I think I spoke to you about that last week. Always try and read. If you could be desperate for the money, ask them if you can take the loan documents. And I know that's not a practice in St. Lucia. I do it. I don't know many people who do it. Do not put your signature to anything you're not sure about. Take it, go and read it. Let somebody look over it for you. Or guess what you can do? They don't want you to take the document. Take some pictures on your phone of it and go and read it and then come back. What does the insurance cover? Does the insurance cover if you fall out of work? Or does the insurance only cover if you die and the bank gets their loan back? Of what benefit is that loan to you that you should not consider what the insurance is for? Verified whether costs like insurance are included in your mortgage repayments, particularly if you take a mortgage. Property taxes. Are these things included? So some lenders might exclude these to make the loan appear cheaper. But then all of a sudden you'll end up with a repayment that you cannot pay because you have property tax, you have insurance to pay. Okay? So consider these things. False statements on loan applications. There are a lot of unscrupulous loans officers who have targets to meet. And all they are concerned about is their targets, their targets, their targets. They are not concerned about you. So sometimes, and I've had a couple of people who've told me that they'll go to the loan officer and then they don't technically qualify the loan officer. Loan officer will tell them, fix this, put this, put that. Never falsify information on a loan application. Not only is it considered fraud and there could be severe penalties, but it could ruin you financially. If you cannot afford the loan, find another way. Helen's Daughters is now giving counseling. Call the counselor. Ask them to refer you to somebody at Helen's Daughters who can maybe direct you to somewhere where you might be able to get some help. Okay? We're not fairies. We cannot help everybody, but we will try, if that makes sense. Okay? If you go to lend money from somebody and they don't want to do a credit check, that's already a bad sign. Legitimate lenders typically will check your credit worthiness, right? Can you repay the loan back? A lack of credit check can significantly can signify predatory intentions. Too good to be true offers. Trust your instincts. If it's too good to be true, then it is too good to be true, right? Always read the fine print and understand the terms and conditions. If you don't, send it to somebody who can assist you. Okay? Legal and professional guidance. While you may think that you are not covered, the small islands, maybe there's not a lot in terms of consumers, loans and stuff like that. I'm not sure, but I'm sure again, the only thing is that the lawyers I can't speak for the entire Caribbean, but a lot of the lawyers are unscrupulous and they are more concerned about the visa and fees they'll get from the banks for the mortgages they do. So if you went to them to take up a case against the bank, they probably wouldn't. But like I tell you, most things you can do it yourself and you will be heard anyway. But for instance, in mortgages, I had a client not too long ago that the bank was being unfair about. The person had lost their job and had written to the bank to ask for time to pay it. And the bank refused. Anyway, long and short of it, I ended up writing to the bank on behalf of the person with a few threats here and there. We ended up getting debt forgiveness for almost 70% of the interest. So all does not fail. Sometimes the person at the bottom you first deal with, they maybe cannot make that decision, but there's always somebody at the top you can write to, and there are laws to protect you too. And if you know them and you can quote them in a letter, more than likely you will get through, right? Because the bank also has a duty of care in law towards you, the same way you have a duty to pay them. And sometimes circumstances means that you cannot do what you have, and they have a duty of care towards you. Okay, so don't forget that. So if you do have a loan and you've been out of work, there's an element of debt forgiveness that the banks are able to do. They can use their discretion and do it. So there's no hard and fast rules that they have to make you pay for it. So you've lapsed on your loan, you want to go back and pay it, and all of a sudden you find yourself, I can't pay it. But then when you try to pay it down, you realize the loan is just as much as what you started and you've already paid 30,000. You can write to the bank asking to forgive some of that interest to allow you to move on and pay the loan. And most of the institutions here, I know in St. Lucia, they would accommodate that. So you guys can look into that, okay? So we spoke about that a little bit, but that I believe could be so great in bridging the gap between access to funding, digital funding. And for those of you all who don't have online banking, you are going to be left behind. I know you all spoke earlier about some people who cannot read. Again, I think that's in a minority. Most people have a smartphone and they are on their phones. So there's a certain level of literacy you need to be able to use a smartphone. If you don't have online banking, apply for it tomorrow. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Not only that too, with microfinancing, for people who give you money to cut down the cost of lending the money to you, a lot of these things now are going to be online. Now you can apply for loans online. I know two of the major banks in St. Lucia in particular, you can apply for a loan online, upload your documents, get approved online without even going into the bank. So if you don't have online banking, contact the bank, get them to do a tutorial if you to show you how to use it. Go in. This will enable you more access to finances if you can do that. Okay. So online lending platforms provide digital alternatives to traditional banks for securing loans. These platforms utilize algorithms and data analytics to assess your creditworthiness. Again, if you have money going into the bank, I know of one bank recently who told me that if you wanted a loan and your salary was going there, they could give you an answer immediately if you qualify for the loan. So do that. Peer-to-peer lending. I hear a lot of people talk about SUSUs. I think you'll call it partner hands. That is a good community idea, but again, you have to have a certain amount of trustworthiness with the people you're going to do that. So be mindful of these things, right? And with online banking, that's easy now to do partner SUSU or peer-to-peer, because now I know, for instance, in St. Lucia, you can make a transfer to somebody and the money gets in the account in 2 hours. I'm almost sure that the same applies for the rest of the Caribbean. So now you don't have to walk to go and drop the money for somebody, drop it. You can just do a transfer to make your money if that's how you choose to be able to do some lending things in terms of SUSU. So technology fosters financial inclusion by enabling rural women to access banking services where they were previously unable to or difficult to reach. Mobile banking allows women in remote areas to manage their finances without needing to travel long distance to a bank. Online lending platforms provide opportunities for women entrepreneurs to secure funding for their businesses, often with less stringent requirements than traditional bank. Okay, so there are challenges and considerations for online banking. So while technology improves access, it's essential to address issues such as digital literacy and internet connectivity in rural areas. So I do recognize that not everybody will have connectivity, but I think most people do for the most part. Ensuring the security of financial transactions and protecting users from fraud, that remains a concern, right? And there must be a constant and collective effort to work together to create inclusive digital financial ecosystem that caters to the unique needs of rural women and the underserved population. The trend now is for AI and things such as blockchain. They must further enhance the accessibility and efficiency of financial services, including partnerships between technology companies and traditional financial institutions. So that is where we're heading. So that's what I'm saying. I don't want you to be left behind and you even further behind in the access to funding or credit just because you have not updated yourself on something as, and I will say simple, and it's probably not simple for everybody, as digital banking, okay? So what can you do? That's a question I always ask. What can I do? What can I do to make things better? So I would say, while I understand the nature of Caribbean politics is such that we generally not going to be heard, but you all have representatives in your community. It doesn't matter whether you're on the side that you support or you don't. But I would instruct you or encourage you, instruct is perhaps not the right word, to go to them, speak to them about these things that you are affected by. How can they help you? And if you're not getting resources, run for local government, be the change you want to see. We need more women in politics to be able to change things. And politics does not always have to be bad. So speak to your representatives, see how they can influence policies in making things. Collaborate with NGOs such as Helen's Daughters, where collectively together, you can be stronger in negotiating for things like access to funding. If you go to the bank on your own, you may not. But if you have a group of 300 women saying, listen, this is what we need, this is what we want, you are more likely to be heard. Okay? Advocate for women's rights. Promote awareness and advocacy within your communities about access to funding. See how you can perhaps form a cooperative if there isn't one already. See how you can be part of the cooperative and strengthen it so it can work for yourself and your community. So these are the things I would like to see you go back and do. Okay? Now, I have this that I pulled up from a bank. I did not put the bank's name deliberately. I don't know how many of you all have heard about it. It's called the ECPGCG. I mean, the acronyms are so long that for me, that should be a turn off in the first place. But anyway, this one says 2 million, but I don't think all of them are 2 million. There's for 100,000, 200,000. I just pulled up that one in particular. And it's the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation. Now people hear guarantee and they think. And would you believe 4 years ago, I had a business in St. Lucia, and the bank actually approached me saying, oh, you have this, you can apply for this, you will qualify for it. And I said, okay, what are the things? And all they say is that, oh, we guarantee this, we guarantee that. You just have to put up that equity. But being me, I needed to read the fine print. Do you know when I read the fine print, there was one thing that I saw in it that I could not justify ever taking a loan. And then when I spoke to the officer who had called me about it, I kid you not, she did not even know that was part of the loan. Every year, they reassess the loan, and the balance that you haven't paid, you have to pay a 1% fee to the bank. Explain to me, make that make sense according to how they would say it in St. Lucia. You have a loan, you pay in interest, and every year you have to pay 1%. So the interest rate they're giving you, the 1% you pay on the balance of it. So for instance, during the first year, you have a loan for, let's say 100,000 and you paid 20,000. At the end of the first year, you'll have to repay 1% of the 80,000 remaining, plus the interest you had to pay. Does that make sense? So I bring this up to show you this is a real life program they have for funding. So when you see funding guarantee, don't get too excited. Read, see how it benefits you. Don't get trapped and caught up in this. I know a lot of people who took these loans and they had to provide equity of some sort, and now they're not making the monies because they didn't have valuable plans and their financial literacy was not as good as it should have been to enable them to make a decision to take a loan like that. So my point is, read, ask questions, don't be afraid, don't let any loan officer intimidate you. Okay, you need that loan, you're the one who's going to pay it. Remember, these banks are rich, they have money, the loans officers are only there to make their target so they can get their salary, and you are the one who will be left and saddled with a debt that will just continue in a cycle of debt and debt and debt and debt. So access to finance is good, we need it, but we need to do it responsible when and if we get access to it. Okay? Some of the criticisms of this particular guarantee funding thing was it was not effective for particularly women because they had limited access to resources. Many of the women were not aware of the services that was offered by this and may not understand how to navigate the application process. The application process was so tedious, bureaucratic hurdles, documentation requirements. It was just a hot mess, right? There was not adequate support services. So similarly, we spoke earlier about when you get funding, somebody just gives you money, but nobody educates you, or there's no support going forward as to how to manage that money, to be able to access and see where you are at, how well you're doing, what can you do better. More than likely, if you don't have these, the training, the mentorship opportunities, and you are given all this and the risk is completely on you, that's a recipe for disaster. So while the ECPG, sorry, it's aimed to enhance the access of finance for small businesses in the Caribbean. Addressing those criticisms is essential to ensure that women who often face challenges can benefit from the programs. They should have tailored the services to meet the specific needs of the demographics, but they didn't. So from perspective of a female-led business, particularly in rural areas, there are several disadvantages that were associated with this particular thing, right? So I say this so that you can be aware when you are getting things, okay? So funding. I'm not sure if I was going to have a big reveal finale, but I wanted to talk to you about different methods of funding. And I deliberately put this at the end because funding for women in the Caribbean refers to financial resources or support providing to women living in areas to help them start or grow their businesses, improve their livelihoods, or invest in your communities. The funding can come in various forms. So loans, traditional banks or credit unions or microloans that women can use to finance their business ventures. These typically need to be repaid with interest over a period of time. Grants. Everybody gets excited about grants because grants are financial assistance that does not need to be repaid. Grants are often provided by governments, NGOs, or international organizations that support specific projects or initiatives aimed at empowering women, because women is our demographic. Subsidies, financial support that reduces the cost of certain services or products often provided by governments. So for instance, you want fertilizer, but the government will subsidize it. So instead of the $80 a bag, you'll pay 40. So subsidies are a good way as well to be able to help. So if you are getting subsidies, that's a form of funding. So please look into it. Don't say, no, it's not, it's money I want. Sometimes the money is good, but sometimes you can take the other things they're doing. Investment. That's capital provided by investors in exchange for a share of the business or profits. They may not require repayment in traditional sources, but it does involve sharing ownership of property or profit, sorry. So, will you have to repay? For the loans, yes, you'll have to repay the loan amount along with any interest as per agreed with the lender. The grants, no, you do not need to be repaid. They are essentially free money given to support specific initiatives, right? Subsidies, generally subsidies do not require repayment, but they may come with certain conditions or obligations. So when you get the subsidies, it might be that, okay, we're going to give you 10 bags of fertilizer, but you cannot go and sell it or give it to somebody else. If you receive investment or capital, you won't repay it like a loan, but you may need to share the profits or give up a portion of ownership of your business, right? If you're considering funding options, it's important to understand the terms and conditions associated with each type of funding to determine whether repayment is required and to what extent. That is what I want you all to listen to. Whether payment is required and to what extent, because it's the extent that normally harms you. So I came across this site. You all can take a picture of it so you can have a look. And this is a place where there's a lot of funding available for different things. So I thought I would not give you any specific funding available, but I would give you a site where you can find funding specific to the Caribbean. There's for many different things: climate change, business support. Some of them, the deadlines are October. So again, have a look. I believe you have gotten some help in grant fund writing. And if you need to revert back to that, you can ask Helen Daughters to send you the lecture that was done. If you need help, you can ask as to whether or not they have the resources to help. I'm not sure. Okay. So I'm coming to the end, but as we conclude today, I want you to remember that each of you have the power to transform your financial situation. It's about making informed choices, asking for help when needing, and believing your ability to manage your financial future. So I want you to use what you learned today to build on a brighter, more secure tomorrow for yourselves and your families. I really want to thank you for listening. and for holding the attention of 140 people, well, 42 now, for an hour and a half. That is really good. I'm going to open the floor for questions and things, but I just want to remind you of a few of the house rules. Remember to be respectful. Understanding financing can be challenging, and we all come from diverse backgrounds with varying degrees of familiarity when it comes to finance. So please, let's be supportive and respectful towards each other and the experiences and questions that might be asked this evening. If something isn't clear and you need clarification, please, my name and email, I cannot do WhatsApp, only email, will come up at the end of the presentation. You can please send me an email. I will respond. I cannot respond, maybe depending on the volume I get all one time, but I promise you will get a response from me. Privacy matters. Should you need to share any personal information or sensitive information, I encourage you to do that in a private message. So let us use the opportunity to learn, support, and empower each other. Every question or insight, it enriches our collective understanding, right? So no question is too trivial, and every perspective tonight is welcome. So please go ahead and ask your questions, whether it be on the chat or you want to put up your hand and I will answer. So I'm already seeing some questions. Thank you very much, Bernadette. What do you think about 100% financing from the bank? When you say 100, well, 100% financing just means you have a longer time to pay it back, so the bank will make more interest. So my argument with this is that always be ahead of the bank. The bank will offer you 100% financing for land because land value appreciates. They don't offer you 100% financing for mortgage. Neither they do it. Very frequently they do it for vehicle, but when they do it, it's one, to meet their targets, and it's not beneficial to you. Remember, the banks will only ever do what's in their interest. If you're going to buy a piece of land for 100,000 and you have 30,000, I would say take 20,000, put it as a down payment, and take the loan for 80 instead, because you will pay it back in less time and you will pay the bank less money. So 100% financing, if you have no choice, but I would suggest that you probably take a period of time and save for part of the money you need and don't take 100% financing.
Okay,
Now,
we have
guys, go ahead.
Lisa Elibox. Is it agriculture land? I think she's talking about Invest St. Lucia.
Oh yeah, Invest St. Lucia has agriculture land. They have property, well, in Viewford area, I know for, because that's where I am based. But I do know they have agriculture land. They have residential land. Yeah, they do. They lease as
Okay.
well, so you can always lease and buy later, but they do have.
Okay, Lisa again. I went to Invest St. Lucia some time ago as well, and they said they currently have nothing available.
Okay, so again, there's something in there's an act about these statutory bodies. So don't let them tell you there's nothing. There's an application form online, fill it out, submit it both in person and via email. I am a bit of a tick when I want something, so I tend to get things, but you have to be persistent and you have to want it. If you fill out the form, there's an obligation for the officers at Invest St. Lucia to let you know what is available. And if there is something available, when you put it in your preference, depending on how many people they have waiting for it, there's policies and procedures that guide these people. So they cannot just tell you there is nothing. So fill out the form first, put your preference, and when you've submitted the form, go back and say, I've filled out this form. This is what I'd like. Can you show me what you have? Okay, Lisa? Now, we want to go back to let's go back to the scenarios. If you all are not going to ask any questions, I would really like you all to ask any question. But does anybody have any questions about the scenario about?
We have Anne-Marie, who has her hands up.
Sure, Anne-Marie, go ahead.
Good night, everyone. a very comprehensive discussion this evening. I am going back to the issue where I had a business loan a few years ago from a financial institution, and then I fell ill, was unable to continue business and working as usual. However, for about a year and a half, I could not repay any of the interest or loans. But I think I vividly remembered that I was told my loan was insured. And I went to the bank and I asked the question, and I was told no. What actually happened then, when the auditors came in and got my report, I was called into the bank and they asked why and what is the reason for me not repaying the loan. So I explained to them I had all the medicals and everything, and I showed them and stuff. And the head of the auditor team turned to the bank manager and said, but this loan is showing on our system as an insured loan. So why is this still on the system when it should have been written off? So I'm saying this to say that, we must be very careful. As you said before, when you're taking a loan, read the fine prints. But the banks do not want to give you that. They will never tell you that the loan is insured. So had this not happened, I would have been in default. And then what happened? My property would have gone up for auction. So I had to say thank God for the auditors that actually came through at that time. So be careful, very, very, very careful when taking a loan.
Thank you so much for that thing. So we have a real life experience of what I was speaking about. A lot of these loans, most of them are insured. There's always an insurance component. Ask what you are insured for before you take the loan. Ask for a copy of it. How many of you all have taken loans and have a copy of your loan document that you sign at your home? Do not leave the bank without the bank photocopying anything you put your signature on for a loan. You need to ask. If you ask, they don't have a choice but to give you. Because if you don't know, you're not going to be any the wiser. Okay? So anybody else? Okay, sorry, I saw a question in the group saying, is there anything you can be done for the banks that charge a fee once you have less than the stipulated amount? Unfortunately, I had an email about that today and I called the bank and the banks are rigid on that. If you don't have money in the bank, they still take their fees. If you open the account on the premise that you're going to maintain a minimum balance, the banks only care about themselves. I'm afraid to tell you that, but that's the reality of it. How can permanent shares in the credit union benefit you? That's a fantastic question. The permanent shares in the credit union benefits the credit union and everybody else in the credit union, except if you're going to take a loan. Sorry, I'm smiling because that is such a good question. The premise of permanent shares is that it's an amount that sits there so that they can use it to borrow, to do other things, to invest. But how does it really benefit you? How much interest do you get on it? So perhaps you should find out whether the interest on your permanent shares and your withdrawable shares are different and see how it benefits you. And you can always ask to withdraw your permanent shares. I am not sure because there is not much being paid on savings in the Caribbean at the moment. So your money is better invested in property, where the property value will appreciate more than the interest the bank will pay for you. That's my perspective. But I understand not everybody has the capabilities of getting profit. But maybe invest it in a business, invest it in something that will bring you long-term financial security. You said you only for land they give 100%. So what the trick persons? Sorry. No, I didn't mean only land. I think at the moment they give 100% for cars as well. But again, a car is not, how should I put it? A car is a car depreciates. The moment you drive off a car lot with a car, it depreciates by 20%. You cannot withdraw on permanent shares? Of course you can. You cannot withdraw, but if you decide to close it, I'm sure you can. So find out from your credit union, because I had a client that had permanent shares with a credit union, the civil service, and they were able to ask for their shares back. So find out what your credit union requires. Only if you close it. Okay, so I'm not sure. So in that case, perhaps leave more money in your withdrawable shares than your credit union shares. Sorry, people, if you're not following the chat group, she was just asking about permanent shares. And then Cynthia, you asked something about, you said only the land they give 100% for. So what the trick persons? I don't understand the second part of your question.
Okay, I have my
And
hand up.
okay, go ahead, whoever have their hand
Cynthia.
up, sorry.
Yes. You see, I've noticed the banks come along with the car dealers in, you know, wanting people to purchase new vehicles.
Mhm.
They always have that campaign, and young people who just starting will quicker go for a loan, and they telling you 100%, financing. They always say that.
Mm.
And I just find it strange. I'm learning something new here because honestly, right now my head is like a sponge, taking
You don't have to do
everything.
100% financing. So basically, you can get them to approve you for the 100%. And then guess what to do? So you remember last week we spoke about putting monies directly to your principal.
Yes.
So they'll do 100% financing. So you can do two things. When they're ready to write that check to the dealership, you can say, no, I don't want the 130 anymore. I just want 100. I'll put the 30 myself. You understand? There's nothing they can do. Or you can let them pay the company the 130. And when you get your 20 that you had saved, you just take it and you put it, you go to the bank physically. Don't do it online. Don't do it as a loan payment because they'll split it. You take it, you go to the bank and you say, I need you to apply that to the principal. Does that make sense? So the
Yes.
loan is already less by 100. And I do agree, again, I see this as predatory behavior. Today or yesterday, I went to get my car service, and the car dealership actually has a different bank there every month waiting to give people loans for vehicles.
Wow.
But if you think about it, you take a loan for 130,000, 100,000, let's use 100 because it's easier to calculate. The moment you step out of that lot, that vehicle is only worth $80,000. 20% gets wiped off the moment you drive out of the car lot. And then you
Wow.
still have a loan for 100,000, right?
Wow. Yes. I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
You have a mortgage for say 20 years and you pay 10 years already. Can you go to the establishment and, well, now I'm learning about the principal and start paying towards that principal to bring down the
Of
mortgage?
course, but what you need to find out, which is something you should have found out at the beginning of the mortgage, is there a penalty for repayment early? A lot of the banks that give mortgages, you sign on the dotted line saying the first 5 years, you cannot pay back early. There's a penalty.
Well,
If you are still underneath that penalty, what you can do is to put the extras you have in a savings, and the moment the 5 years come, you put it to the principal. Or you can start shopping around at other banks for when the 5 years come. Go to another bank. I don't know what aversion we have, one as women, because we think people won't take us seriously, for you to walk up to 2 free banks and say, listen, show them your track record. You've always paid your loan. You still have a steady income. You have a mortgage at that bank. You're not happy with the bank. What interest rate can they offer you? Tell them the bank is offering you 5.5 and say, listen, can you give me 4? If you can give me 4, I will move my mortgage to you. Because
okay.
every bank is for their profit. They don't care about you. So you have to make yourself care about you and do what's best for you. So if moving to another bank for 1% or 0.5% less will shave off 5 years of your loan, why would you not do it? That's your benefit.
Yeah, because I found out, I told them if I have to pay off that loan before it's time, they told me I have to pay 1%.
Exactly. So there might be a period of 4 years or something, but surely your loan cannot be not paid off at all. How many years you have left for the loan?
6.5.
And you have to pay 1%. So how many years have you had the loan?
They gave me 13 years.
So you still have 6.5, but that's a bit unusual.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that tomorrow, God willing,
So
and get back to
okay,
you
so everybody who's
personally.
concerned no problem. And everybody who's concerned about their loan, what you can do, you have a right to do that. Walk into the bank and ask for a statement on your loan. So on the statement, you'll see every payment you've made. You've seen how the payment has been split to principal and thing, and also ask for a copy of the agreement of your loan so you can review it. That is your right. And do not take loans without either taking, don't let anybody tell you they can't give you a copy. You are fixing your signature to that, so your right is to take a copy. And try to take the copy at the time of signing for the loan, not after. Okay?
Okay.
And don't be afraid. Remember, these loans officers are only about meeting their targets. It could be, they don't even care if you're their sister or their mother. Don't let anybody make you lie to get a loan. I do believe in that. That's unethical, because if you cannot afford the loan, you cannot afford it. But likewise, do not do something in your interest. Do you think you don't have time? How many banks we have in the Caribbean like that? We on our phone all day, and I always make reference to that. Watching people's status. Go walk to 3 banks for every day and go and check your business. You understand?
Yes.
Make time for things that benefit you. And again, if anybody having anything, I may not be able to respond to you immediately, but I don't know the answer to all the questions. I really don't. I'm being honest with you, but I will direct you to where I think you might be able to get the answer.
Well, Miss Daniel, when I get through everything, I will write you. I'll email you
No
all
problem.
my concerns by next week.
No problem. So my email address is on the screen now, okay?
Yes, I have it from the first time, but I
No
just
problem.
need time to really address everything in point form for you and just email you.
No problem. And
Okay?
Miss Reynolds, your message
Yep.
is noted. I'm happy to get an email from you.
Okay, we have the SEMA.
No problem. Go ahead.
Hi, good night. My name is Decima Correa from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So
Hello.
mine is more of a comment. And
Mhm.
I think someone alluded to it earlier in the chat in terms of the credit unions and their online presence. And to me, it's a very vexing question, a vexing issue, not so much a question, a vexing issue, in that when you need to deal with most things, certainly if you want to check what's happening to your account or anything like that, you have to go to but in St. Vincent, I do not know about St. Lucia or St. Kitts, but for us, you have to go to the credit union and stand in line and waste time, valuable time. And so to me, and even a simple thing of paying someone, so you have an account with whichever bank, and you want to make an online payment to the credit union, you cannot do that. And I find, so they probably need to, not probably, they need to come into the 21st century and come in quickly, because the credit union play a very, very important role in terms of for women, and not just women, but persons who are, have lower income and need to access financing.
What's your name?
Decima Korea.
Miss Korea, perhaps you can open your own credit union, and I'll tell you why. And don't feel like that's a tall order for you. You just need 10 people to open a credit. Well, in St. Lucia, the Cooperative Acts denotes that. But can I tell you something? The reason the credit union is not able to do like the banks, and I don't know if St. Vincent and St. Kitts, they do that yet, but in St. Lucia, they now use the bank's card to be able to give people debit cards that they can use in ATMs they have. But the threshold for the credit union is not the same that the banks need to meet according to ECCB and international regulations on the FATCA and ATCA, which is European and American banking laws, right? The reason they're able to borrow you money at 12%, they borrow you money at 12% is because they are assuming greater risk. I think if you have savings in the bank, you are covered under ECCB for most of it. In the credit union, I'm sure a lot of people don't know that. If you have savings in the credit union, I think the maximum you would cover even though you have 100,000, you have 200,000, the maximum they'll pay back if they fall flat on their face or if something were to happen is 50,000. So the credit union assumes more risk, but they also have less regulations than the bank. So you cannot equate them with a bank because the banks are there to make money. They profit mongers. The credit union is supposed to be, and I say that in inverted commas, for their members, although sometimes now they don't really act in the interest of their members. So I know there's technology now that has improved. I recently worked with a company that was doing some credit union technology in the States and was hoping that the credit unions in the Caribbean would hang on to it so that people could have better access. But the system is costly. Even the local banks here don't want to spend money on good systems. I am sorry to say I bank with the foreign banks because I have better access to online banking. I travel a lot for work, so I need to be able to have that. That's essential for me and for my financial, how should I put it, health. So I am not able to bank with a credit union on that premise at all. And the local banks too, like you were saying, if you want to transfer money to a credit union person, most of the credit unions bank with the local bank. So it has to go to an account at the credit union. And then you have to email the credit union to tell them you put the money there, so transfer it to the person in the credit union. So I'm not sure this is something that is going to change in the near future because the credit unions are governed by different rules and their threshold is a lot lower to meet as it pertains to the banks. So don't ever try to equate. I know the credit unions behave like the banks, but they're really not. Your security for your money, the credit union hold, is a lot less than a bank. A lot less. But these are things they don't tell you. Because if you all notice how credit unions have just exploded and they've become so big, and again, you have to question and ask, is it because they now, a lot of the, okay, let me give you an example. A lot of the people in the Caribbean who go to credit unions will give you loans just by fact that you work with the government. So you find a lot of police officers, teachers, nurses, they have a lot of loans with the credit union, even though they cannot afford it. Whereas the bank would be less likely to give them those loans because their debt to income ratio is too high. But the credit union gives it to them. And sometimes these people at the end of the month, somebody's mic is not muted. Sometimes at the end of the month, these people barely have money to meet their daily, but they have assigned their entire salaries to the credit union for loans after loans. So I am not in agreement with the lending practices of the credit union. They're supposed to serve a purpose to help people that need it, but I think sometimes they are doing a disadvantage to their members. So for instance, a member just messaged and said, listen, I have shares with the credit union and they're saying the only way I can get it is close it. The credit union, on the premise of being a credit union or community organization, should be able to recognize that somebody has $3,000 in shares. They have just come into some hardship. Why are you telling them they have to close it rather than you now making an adjustment to be able to allow them to withdraw half of it and leave the rest? Or give them an arrangement to build it back? So sometimes in that instance, I believe the credit union is being punitive. They're punishing the person for having their money. So I would applaud you all. It depends on what you want to get out of your financial health, what methods of banking you choose. My preference for one is not credit unions. Credit unions are brilliant for savings because they pay better interest rates, but also your money is less secure with them than if it was at a bank because of the banking rules that apply in the acts of the different countries, in their legislation. Okay, I hope that answers your question. And any other questions, please?
Yeah, yes, it does. It's just that also because of the stringent conditions that the banks have for you to open an account with them, it has forced some people to opt for the credit union. And so that, so thank you. I think you have covered what I needed to.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I do agree that banks are too stringent and can be a bit more lenient, but the bank also has the bank is also a little bit more responsible in lending in terms of they look at your debt to income ratio. And if it's too high, they will not lend you because you're not going to be able to afford. The credit union takes more risk, which is why you will get that loan, a consumer loan for 6% at the bank, but the credit union they say 1%, but it's actually 12%. It's 1% a month, so it works out to be 12% annually. So it's costing you more to borrow that money that you probably cannot afford. Okay, sorry,
Okay.
credit unions, can you use the concession as a deposit? Coin session, I don't know what that means, sorry. And what's
Okay,
concession?
we have Mrs. Gopal Joseph. Her hands have been up for the longest while.
Okay, go ahead. And then I'll answer Miss Danny David's, Killian David's. Okay. Go ahead, Miss Gopal.
Okay, I have a two-part question.
No problem.
As a farmer, especially in the capacity that we are in tonight, in order to access finance, we need to know the cost of production for whatever it is we're going to plant. Does that fall in your jurisdiction?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that earlier. That in accessing finance, yes, and I think we spoke, and we'll speak a bit more about that in next session when we do business. So
Okay.
yeah, on Tuesday was personal finance. Today is accessing that finance,
Mm-hmm.
or credit and loans. And next week I'll be doing more into businesses. And one of the things is cost of your produce, so that you now can go back and sell it. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll cover that next week. But is there anything in particular you wanted to cover about that?
No, it's just that when you go to the bank or lending institution to get finance, they would ask you for your cost of production. And in order for us to access those loans, we need to know how to work the cost of production. So hence the reason I was
But why
asking.
would the bank ask you for cost of production? I don't understand. If you go to them with a financial statement or with your stuff, what does your cost of production have to do with a bank?
Well, they have to know what security they have to for you to pay the mortgage. Sorry,
No.
the loan.
Yeah, but the banks asking you your cost of production, that one is baffling me. Because, okay, just give me an example of what you produce. Let me just see if I can work my head around that, if you don't mind.
Okay, for example, a colleague of mine went to the bank for financing for watermelon, right?
Mhm.
They told him in order for them to give him the loan, he needs to come up with the cost of production to know what exactly he will be spending on what, so they know how they will get their monies back, because he did not have any statement to show that he had
Okay.
a track record of some banking, repayment to the banks or other means. Hence the reason why they ask him for that cost of
For cost
production.
of production. So can I
Yes.
tell you to be mindful of people that ask you for cost of production? That does not make sense, and I will tell you why. Because if you approach a financial institution for a loan, it means that if they're asking you for your cost of production, it means that they will be preparing your financial statement for you. And that's not
Yes.
good. That's not good ethics. Does that make sense? That is not good ethics, right? What the bank should be asking you is to get help in preparing either a business plan or a forecast or cash flow statement as to how much money you will need. So basically, the cash flow statement would show, or the forecast would show, how many watermelons you plan to have to plant, what will be your loss, how much you plan to harvest. So that would show all that, but to specifically ask you for your cost of production in isolation to anything else, unless your colleague did not relate to you the entire conversation, which I'm more likely to believe. I don't think a bank would just ask you just for your cost of production to give you a loan, because that doesn't make sense. There's so
Okay.
many other more important things. So again, you can figure out what it is, and you can always send me an email and I can see how I can help you. Okay.
Okay. The second part of my question.
Mhm,
Normally, when you take a mortgage from a lending institution, they send
mhm,
you to get insurance coverage for that amount.
mhm.
After completing your repayment to the lending institution, do you get anything back from those insurances, or it just
That,
closes off?
that is a great question. Absolutely great question. Which is why I will not take a mortgage. I will work every day and pay for it by finger and nail. So how it makes sense that a bank not only has your property as security, but wants you to take insurance, and the insurance has to cover. And can I tell you a new little fact these days? If the property is valued of over $400,000, the bank forces you to pay to go and do a medical. And if your cholesterol is too high, your pressure is too high, they decline the loan until you can get it stabilized. But they have a life insurance, and um they have a health insurance, and they have your property. And these policies disproportionately affect women whose blood pressures goes up the most. Huh? So what I'm trying to say is that the bank, let's go back, sorry, to your question, the insurance. Do you get the insurance money back? There are different types of insurance. The ones that people typically go for, and they're the cheapest ones, you get absolutely nothing back. So if the mortgage is for 25 years and you get a 25-year thing and you pay off the mortgage, you don't get anything back. But that would depend on the type of insurance you went for. The cheaper ones are the ones you normally don't get anything back for. So you get a term policy to cover the mortgage. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
We have Lisha. Lisha, go ahead. Lisha, are you there? Okay.
Okay, Maureen Fontenelle, can you explain what you mean by can you use concessions as a deposit? I'm not sure. So if you can speak, tell me, or if you cannot speak, type. Oh no. Maureen says, can you use concession as deposit? Okay. And then Petra Ogi said
Hello?
duty-free concessions. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute my. Good night, everybody. Miss, since we're talking about credit union and we're talking about where in terms of allocating monies and stuff, I recently joined a credit union, but I was a little bit ignorant when I joined the credit union. So in between the permanent shares, the regular shares,
Withdrawal shares.
yeah, permanent shares, regular shares, and your deposits. So I think I put the bulk of the money, I put them on permanent shares. And then I don't know, the question like, why did I put all that money on the permanent shares? So I'm thinking that the permanent shares would give me more money or give me more interest. That's why that's a good reason for putting it there. But from what I heard, the permanent shares, you said you have to write to them to withdraw from it. So I don't want it to be a case where it's difficult for me to get to my permanent shares, or should I take some of that money and tell them that I was ignorant about when I did it, and then have it transferred to regular shares so I can actually get a loan when I'm ready for? Should
Yeah,
I
so
do that,
you
or
can do that.
should I leave it
No,
as
you
is?
can. Well, you can still get the loan on the permanent shares, I think, but it's just that you don't have the access for the permanent shares is not as easy as if it's withdrawable. So if you had an
Okay.
emergency, you're not going to be able to access it. So it depends on what your needs are.
Okay, but if that's why I was saying if the permanent shares is a lot because it's permanent and it's staying there, I'm still sending money every month towards the permanent shares.
No,
But
no, no,
is
no,
it
no,
a
no,
case
no.
where
Unless no, and not only that too. Look, somebody else in the chat said, and I know there's some credit unions that say you cannot withdraw the permanent shares. So it's like you're building up the credit union and not yourself. Because remember, the permanent shares are not really withdrawable. So you should
because
send
I
the
went
money
to
to the withdrawable shares.
okay, because I still went to them. I told them I spoke to a member in there, and I told them I was a little ignorant as to when I put it in there and everything, because I thought permanent shares, yes, I'm investing into
No.
into the credit union, but
Yeah.
once I build that, I will gain a lot more interest, and then
And
probably I
then
can
some
withdraw the
credit
interest.
unions, you need to read the rules of the credit union, because some credit unions will say you cannot even get the shares back. You have to find somebody in the credit union who want to buy it. So go and check what your credit union bylaws says.
All right then.
Okay? Because it might be a
Okay.
situation where you may not be able to get it, where you have to write to get it, where you can lose some money for you to get it back. There's so many different, because the credit union every credit union has their own bylaws.
All right. So regular shares are more flexible, and you can get a loan
Yes.
easier with the regular
And the
shares.
other thing you need to ask them so you can make that decision is the interest on the regular shares and the
It's higher.
permanent shares different. No, it's not this
Yes,
high.
it
I think
is.
it's dividends you get. You get dividends. The more permanent shares you have, the more dividends you'll get. That's what it is.
Okay. I think when I asked them, I think it was about probably 10% or 8%, something like that. But they were probably like a 2% difference.
It's dividends they're
2%
giving you.
difference. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
then. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
So somebody asked about duty-free concessions. I saw that. You can't reward a permanent shares, but you can sell it to another. Okay, Monrose, that depends on which credit union. I don't think all of them have it. You get paid dividends once a year on permanent shares. It is true you have to sell to someone. Okay. Every credit union is different because I think the civil servants, yeah, some people you have to close it and take it. Somebody asked about FAR. An FAR vehicle, you ask about duty-free, unless the rules and the laws have changed. A deposit at a bank for concession, it doesn't work like that. What a concession on an FAR is, when you buy a vehicle from JQ or from Northwest, if you buy the vehicle for $180,000, I'm just using a hypothetical, that's not real. And the duties on it was 50%. It means that the vehicle costs $90,000. What an FAR does is that it prevents you from paying the duties that JQ would have to pay to the government. So no, first thing you have to do is to make an application through your extension officer to get approval to get an FAR. You can't just go and get an FAR. When you receive the approval, you approach the bank with a letter from one of the establishments telling you what your duty-free price will be for the FAR. Then the bank will decide whether they're giving you the loan and what deposit you'll need. But the concession has nothing to do with the FAR. And no, you cannot use a concession, as far as I know, as a deposit on an FAR. A duty-free concession simply means that the portion that you would have paid for duty, if I bought the vehicle without an FAR, you with an FAR does not pay that. Now, before the FAR, duty-free used to be 100%. I am not sure if there's a limit on it now. You need to find that out as well. Because I know for returning residents, it used to be 100%. Now there's a limit of 50,000 US on the duties, and you pay the difference. So these are questions you need to ask. What are the duties on the vehicle before you buy? Because sometimes the unscrupulous lending policies of the car dealership, they will add even more to make it seem like you're getting a lot of duty off, but you're not. So before you do that, find out what the duties are on the vehicle you want to buy. Call the lender and ask them what's the price of the vehicle duty paid, without telling them that you have an interest in getting duty free. Then you go back to them and you say, listen, I want it duty free. Then you make the calculations to make sure they haven't schemed you too. Then you go to the bank with an open invoice, present it, and then the bank will tell you what their requirements are for getting the loan. I hope that answers your question. If you have any further queries about that, please feel free to let me know. The comments in the chat about the dividends. Every credit union is different. Their bylaws would stipulate what and how they determine their permanent shares and withdrawable shares. I think there's a uniform among most of them, but some of them are different. So the best thing to do, if you haven't done so already, I gather from the chat that a lot of you bank with credit unions. Just like I tell the people who bank with the banks, the credit union is governed, your credit union must have bylaws. Ask for a copy. When you join, they should have given you a copy. If they haven't given you a copy, ask for a copy of your credit union bylaws and read it. Read it so you know where you are, to what you can expect, what they have to do. Okay?
Okay, Ms. Daniel, we're going to be taking the last question. Mrs. Hilton McVeigh, go ahead.
Hi, good night, everybody again. Miss Daniel, if you
Yes.
already have a mortgage, good night. If you already have a mortgage, can you so you had to get the insurance, the life insurance on it. Well, can you go back to the insurance company and change the type of insurance you have so that you can get something at the end, or that's not possible once you've already signed everything and you have the mortgage with the
Again,
insurance?
that is an absolutely fantastic question. But guess what? Like the banks, the insurance company will only work in its interest. You've gotten a little bit older since you last got it, so they'll think their risk is higher, right? I
Yes.
am almost certain they will not change it because they already know that you're not going to get anything and you're just paying for it. You're staying healthy to keep your mortgage. And
Okay.
sometimes I wonder, and I need to find out from the Financial Services Authority, particularly in St. Lucia, is it a legal requirement to have insurance on a mortgage when the bank already has ownership of the title until you pay for it. Again, I don't know if that would be considered. I don't know, but I just find it's exorbitant, some of the things they ask for. But I will try and find out for you.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Now I
Yes.
notice people are dropping off. I'm sorry for taking extra of your time, but I'm happy to stay back and answer questions for the questions that we took. So thank you again so much to everybody. Today we've covered, so much. I'm appreciative and grateful for your attention, for the questions. I look forward to getting emails and whatever way I can help you all. And next week, our last session, we're going to be looking at setting up a business, running and keeping a successful business. Okay?
Okay. Thank you very, very much, Ms. Daniel. Thank you for
No problem.
sharing your wealth of knowledge on financial literacy. And I know for a fact the ladies have a lot of questions to ask, and they will be doing their own research. Thank
No
you a
problem.
lot, Ms.
No
Daniel.
problem. Take care. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night,
Good
everybody.
night, and thank you.
Ms.
Good
Daniel, great job.
morning.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Good
morning.
night,
Good
everybody.
morning. Good. Take care. Night, night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
All right, good night.